What's up, everybody? It is nice to see you. If it's your first time here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Dr. Brandon Osborne. I'm the Director of Training here at Momentum WOD. I'm a StrongFirst certified kettlebell instructor and a doctor of chiropractic with about 10 years of clinical experience helping athletes manage their musculoskeletal injuries in private practice. Today, what we are going to do is what we've been doing over the course of the last couple of months. We are going to be looking at the strength training routine of one of your favorite combat sports athletes. We are going to break down their strength training routine, looking at what we like, what we don't like, and what you can take to utilize in your own training routines to better what you're doing and make it more effective. The subject of today's video is somebody who is not directly involved in mixed martial arts, but somebody who is affiliated by nature of his business. That individual is Aubrey Marcus. Aubrey is the owner of the lifestyle brand Onnit, which has clothing, supplements, fitness equipment, and other products for individuals who are looking to better their health and fitness. While Aubrey is not a mixed martial arts athlete nor a professional jiu-jitsu competitor, he is somebody who trains jiu-jitsu and is affiliated with the practice through his association to his brand and through Joe Rogan as well. The routine that we're going to break down today is one that Aubrey has put together. It's a series of 5 movements, 3 of which are kettlebell exercises, and the prescription has been dubbed the Onnit Primal Challenge. So today we're going to look at the Onnit Primal Challenge, and I will let you know what I think. Okay, so before we get into this, as always, I want to throw it out there that the intent of this video is not to belittle or put down Aubrey, but to provide an appraisal of the technique that we're seeing so you can take that information and utilize it with what you're doing. I will say that this video was done in 2013 and Aubrey's technique has improved significantly since then. I've seen more recent videos of him training with kettlebells that look much better than what he's doing here in this video. And you know, to throw it out there for myself, if you took a video of me from a few years ago and compared it to what my technique looks like today, a few years ago it would have been pretty scary as well. So Aubrey's human and he has learned from his mistakes over the years, and hopefully we can learn from his mistakes as well today. All right, kicking things off, Aubrey is just kind of walking us through the series of movements that he's going to be doing. He's talking about the primal nature of kettlebell training. I would call it facilitating full body biomechanics and movement quality. He calls it primal, same thing, but it is one of the many benefits that comes along with training with kettlebells. So I think before we get started, we're going to stretch things out a little bit. Aubrey's doing a quadriceps stretch, which I would caution you with prior to physical activity. We know that static stretching as opposed to dynamic stretching will actually activate what are called the GTOs, the Golgi tendon organs within the muscle belly, and will actually cause you to be tighter than looser. So you want to go through an active stretch like the second variation that Aubrey did there. We are grabbing the kettlebell and we are going to start with our first movement here, which I'm going to pause at the start of the movement here. Kettlebell deadlift. So first things first, how do you set up the bell when you're first getting started with this movement? The location of the bell should be lined up with what are called the medial malleoli, which are those little bumps on the inside of your ankles. You want the bell to be in that position for the start of each and every repetition, which means that when you finish a repetition, the bell should return to that spot, and you might need to create a little bit of posterior pull to relocate back to that spot, but that's where you want to start and that's where you want to finish. Aubrey isn't far off from that spot, but that's a good landmark for you to utilize to make sure that you're doing the exercise correctly. Second thing is we look at the way that Aubrey is picking up the bell. Look at the positioning of his low back. It's completely flexed. If you are using a heavy bell, you're going to hurt yourself. If you're doing it with a barbell and you're using heavy weight, you are going to hurt yourself. You should not be putting the low back into a rounded position when performing this exercise at any point of the exercise. If you're tall and your mobility isn't there to be able to get down to the weight without doing this, prop the bell up, prop the barbell up, put it on a rack, put it on a platform, do something to accommodate to your size if getting down to that depth using your hips and your knees is not something that you're comfortable with. So that would be the first thing that I would say with regards to what he's doing. And we'll notice as we play the video here, with each and every repetition, he's putting that low back into a flex position, which is not where you want to be when you're performing deadlifts. And I'm sure if we watched Aubrey nowadays, he would not be performing this exercise in this fashion. The second thing, pausing at the top of the repetition, Aubrey is taking his low back beyond a neutral position and he's going into a hyperextended position. That is going to shear the joints of the lumbar spine when you add load. And over time, that can create injuries of the low back to the joints of the low back, what are called the facet joints. So when you get to the top of each and every repetition, it should resemble a tall standing plank. So like if you took a plank and then inverted it, that's the position you should be in. Your low back should not be extended when you get to the top of a deadlift or a swing, which we'll see a little bit later.
And your butt, posterior side of your body, all right?
So he's talking about what it's working, posterior chain, glutes, hamstrings, core, your lat should be engaged to that movement. So the second thing we're going into is a kettlebell swing. I'm going to pause and we're going to replay the way he started that set. So if we look at the way that Aubrey's initiating this set, he has the bell in both hands, so he's about to perform a two-arm swing, and he's just kind of initiating the movement by creating this like pendular motion with his hips, and then generating the momentum from there to create the swinging motion of the swing. This is not the right way to get your set started. You start from the ground and you hike the bell through your legs to generate the momentum to get yourself into the first repetition of whatever ballistic exercise you're performing. The hike is not only going to create momentum, but it's also going to keep you safe. What Aubrey's doing here with this weight, I wouldn't be too concerned that he hurts himself, but as he gets up in weight, if he starts using a 24 kilo bell or a 32 kilo bell, he would start to be at significant risk for injury starting his set in this fashion. So it's one of the most fundamental things, the way you get the bell off the ground, the way you get your momentum started, that is through the hike. Treat it with respect. Treat it as if it is the first repetition of every set of a ballistic kettlebell exercise. Okay, so the second thing we notice as Aubrey is performing this set is that there is a significant difference in the amount of bend in his knees at the top and bottom of every repetition. What this suggests to me is that he's not hinging from the hips as much as he is squatting. We would call it a squatty hinge in the business. This is going to rob him of the power that there is to be gained out of this exercise. If you are squatting rather than hinging, you are completely missing the point with regards to what you should be doing with a swing. The way you want to think about it is that you are sending your hips back rather than squatting. So as we watch this back, you can see it pretty clearly that with each repetition, his knees are initiating the bend rather than his hips. The other thing is at the bottom of every repetition, you'll see Aubrey's feet are coming off the ground. Once again, if you start getting into heavier weights, you're going to be putting yourself at risk to lose your balance and hurt yourself. You should be actively engaging your feet in the ground, not only as a safety measure, but because there are performance gains to be had from using that musculature in your feet. I like the fact that Aubrey is wearing a minimalist shoe. If you're going to be training with shoes on, that's the way to do it. If you're working out in a gym or something like that. But that doesn't mean that you completely neglect that area of your body if you're wearing shoes. You need to have those firmly rooted into the ground, those feet firmly rooted to protect yourself and reap the maximum benefit of this exercise. I will leave a link in the description below of my favorite minimalist shoes for training with kettlebells if you are not able to train barefoot. So that is a resource that you can utilize if you're training in a gym and walking around barefoot is frowned upon. So you can see there's just no power to this movement. So he's pulling with his arms, squatting from the legs. It's just not what we're looking to do when it comes to a swing. And obviously he's explaining it as he's going. So he's got a lot to think about, but the technique is just not
doesn't matter
It's not
where
very
you
good.
start. It matters that at the end of these 15
And at this
workouts,
point, I'm sure Aubrey knows this because I've seen videos of him swinging kettlebells more recently, and it looks a lot better than this.
relax your arms as much as possible.
Third exercise we're going into is going to be a squat thruster. He's doing a two-arm squat thruster, so he's gripping the bell of the kettlebell and pressing it overhead. So this is a momentum-driven movement. It's not a strict press,
Your elbows to your knees, and then thrust it up.
where he's using the force generated from the squat to press the bell overhead.
Just like that.
With a lighter weight, I would prefer to be doing this in a front rack position, so a one-arm press, repetition-wise. If you're using a press weight bell, you would be shooting for like 5 to 7 repetitions each side. But that would be my preference in terms of doing this exercise to reap the maximum strength benefits out of it. The way that Aubrey's doing it, I think there is more to be gained from a mobility standpoint, particularly within the thoracic spine. It creates a little bit more thoracic spine extension intra-articularly, which, if that's what your goal is, I think that doing it in this fashion is perfectly fine. I'm not sure what we're going into here. Okay, we're going into a two-arm bent over row. And as you saw at the beginning of the movement, like he did with the deadlift, his low back was flexed. So Aubrey just turned sideways, and we're looking at his positioning as he's going through this movement. There's two things to note. One, when we're looking at the spine, when you're going through a bent over position, you want to make sure that your spine is in a neutral position. And at first glance, his spine looks like it is. But when you realize that neutral means that the curvatures of the spine are maintained through the positioning, you quickly come to realize that that is not what he is doing. So the lumbar spine has what is called a lordosis. It has a slight inward curvature. Thoracic spine has a kyphosis, and then the cervical spine also has a lordosis. Those need to be maintained in this position with a braced core for this movement. So for him, the fact that his lumbar spine actually looks flat, to me says that he's in a little bit of flexion in that movement. So for him, I'd want him to stick that butt out a little bit more and create that curvature of the spine so his back is protected here. The second thing is the way he's pulling the bell in. I would want to create an angle with the bell when I am rowing it, where I'm pulling it almost through my belly button as opposed to my chest. So I would just want that a little bit lower down than the angle at which he's performing the exercise. It's a small detail. Both of these things are relatively small details, but those would be the things I would change about this movement to optimize what he's doing and make it safer. I would also, with a light bell, I would prefer to do this with one hand as opposed to two in just a standard one-arm row, which is an awesome exercise to build grip strength, pulling power, core stability. So it's a good exercise to include in your routine. I just wouldn't do it exactly the way that he was doing it. So we're putting the kettlebell to the side, and I think Aubrey's going to be going into some body weight exercises now. The first of which looks like a push-up, which is an awesome exercise. If you don't have any equipment, or you're traveling, or you are just looking for a simple exercise to develop some pressing power and core stability, the push-up is always a good option, and there are ways to make it more difficult as well. But I'm on board with including that into your routine and that being a part of this workout. The second body weight exercise, it looks like he's going into burpees. Some people don't like burpees. I really don't have anything against them as long as your technique is good while you're doing them. The only thing I would change is that, for a combat sport, whether that's mixed martial arts or jiu-jitsu, I would make it a little bit more functional by sprawling at the bottom of every repetition. So as opposed to going into that plank position, I would go all the way down, hips to the ground, to make it more realistic for the sport that you're participating in. So that does it for Aubrey Marcus's kettlebell workout known as the Onnit Primal Challenge. I like the series of exercises that he chose to incorporate into this workout. They're very simple movements that can be done by anybody who has access to one kettlebell. Beginner movements that you're going to get a lot out of: the deadlift, the 2-arm swing, the bent over row, and then body weight exercises, the burpee and the push-up. And I know I'm forgetting an exercise here as well. The squat thruster. So yeah, compound movements that you're going to get a lot of benefit out of from a cardiovascular, endurance standpoint, from a power standpoint, from a stability standpoint, and from a strength standpoint. Aubrey, obviously, his technique wasn't the best in this video, but we're cutting him some slack because it was almost 10 years ago that he filmed this, and we know that he has gotten much better with these exercises since the time this video was filmed. And that does it for our video today. If you have enjoyed this video, if you have found value in the things that I've had to say, you owe it to yourself. Hit the subscribe button. Do not hesitate. Give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below. Let me know whose technique you want to see me critique next time. As always, if you have not done so already, head over to momentumwad.com/join-now. We have a free 7-day trial, no credit card required, where you can access our entire premium library of assets, which includes kettlebell workouts, kettlebell technique, and exclusive content that is waiting for you. I will leave a link in the description below so you can have access to that and begin your kettlebell training journey if you have not done so already. I am grateful that you have joined me today, and I hope to see you back here next week. Until then, I will catch you later.